Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kieran. I help people using a spiritual perspective. The title of this video may seem odd, given that I just said I help people using a spiritual perspective. But spirituality is not supposed to be a buzzword. It's not supposed to be something that, we're supposed to throw ourselves into a category or a box or a label, right? That's not really what it's about. Spirituality to me, since I've been on this journey, has always been about an understanding of one's deepest self, the deepest level, and the world around you, okay? So it's a process of trying to understand yourself at the deepest possible level, okay? At what we would call a soul level, okay? However, I tend to avoid most spiritual people because they are more interested in appearing spiritual than actually being spiritual. Right? Now, I'm not just saying like I avoid people because I'm making these random assumptions about people that consider themselves spiritual. No, I've actually met tons of people. So this isn't coming out of nowhere. This isn't just some sort of arrogant notion. This is coming from experience of meeting a lot of people who claim to be spiritual. Right? So the whole rundown really is what I noticed in my journey is I've met a lot of people that seem to fit into an identity of spirituality, that they seem to make spirituality into themselves. To me, spirituality is not about, it's not about crystals. I like crystals, they're pretty, but it's not about crystals. It's not about thinking that they replace medicine, they cure cancer or depression. It's not about star seeds and there being some intergalactic group of alien beings guiding humanity towards some ultimate goal. There's people on YouTube that claim that that's what's happening, that they're channeling. It's not about channeling. It's not about twin flames. It's not about, it's not about Reiki. It's not about doing all these drugs. It's not about that stuff. It's not supposed to be. And yet, I've noticed that a certain kind of individual would start to appear on my journey, right? And this would be those types of people, the type of people who had always seemed to have drugs in their home of some kind. Oh, you should try mushrooms, man. It's like, well, why do I need to try mushrooms? Didn't have a good experience with mushrooms. They got crystals lining the hallways and the bathrooms. All of the books are, none of them are fiction. None of them are just because they like to read. None of them are, it's always some sort of spiritual, Course of Miracles, The Power and Now, something by Esther Hicks, psychic books, crystals, things of that nature, right? It's not that there's anything even inherently wrong with any of those books. It's just that there's no variety. There's no actual novels. There's no poetry. It's all of these spiritual books. They've got the tapestries. They've got the singing bowls. Got all this spiritual stuff, all of this stuff you could find at a spiritual store. It's the deep V-necks. You ever seen people like that? Oh man, the V-necks go down to here. They got the beads and stuff like that, always around their neck. They're always saying namaste. It's always some white guy saying namaste or some white woman saying namaste, which is ridiculous. And you have all these people appearing spiritual, right? And I'm not saying that they're all assholes running around, but the idea is that it reminds me of being in high school, and you had those cliques. You had the geeks, the jocks, the nerds, the losers or whatever. The outcasts. They all had the same kind of clothing. They all talked the same. They all acted the same. They all hung out together. That sort of groupthink type of mentality. And even in college, I majored in Japanese. For those of you who don't care about the information. And I, would take Japanese classes, language classes, and it would always just be me and usually like one other guy that I would kind of resonate with, and the rest of the people would be just dressing up as anime characters, and their whole personality was anime, and I got no problem with anime. I've watched quite a bit of it in my life, to be honest with you, but I have never made it into my personality. I've never made anime, the culture of anime, into who I am. That wasn't why I took Japanese. And the idea is that people are they're forming themselves into a category or a label. And spirituality is no different. So I would notice these groups of people that that it would become my friends, so to speak, but that if there was any difference in opinions, suddenly it was, suddenly we couldn't talk anymore. Suddenly we couldn't be friends. It was too much. I've had good friends, helpful friends that just stopped talking to me because their law of attraction kind of nonsense way of thinking was not helping, was not working, and was not really what I needed to hear. And because I expressed that opinion, I was low vibes. I was too negative. Couldn't handle it. Right? I'm just not spiritual enough. Or because I didn't think Reiki healed your cancer, or because I didn't think the different types of drugs, which I've tried, the spiritual medicine, ayahuasca, bufo combo, those types of things. I've tried some of those. They didn't make any real big difference, and if you have to keep doing them like 15 times a year in order to become whatever it is you're trying to become, then it's not really life-changing. It's just another thing that you do. It just becomes another escape, right? So you have all these shamans, holding these sort of retreats in their homes and stuff like that. And again, nothing wrong with the individuals. They're not bad people. I'm not trying to paint them in that kind of light. It's hard to not talk about them without sort of judging these kinds of people. But I'm not trying to say they're horrible. But I am trying to say that the danger of groupthink and identifying with a label that otherwise, perpetuates a really dangerous ideas. These are all kind of new age spiritual ideas. And a lot of spiritual people aren't really spiritual in the sense that they're trying to understand themselves at the deepest level, that they're trying to grow, or that they're trying to see what they can do to change the world in a practical and grounded way. A lot of the people aren't trying to do that, okay? Especially most of the ones that I've met. And of course I could have met these people to help me, advance myself. So I'm not going to say that you yourself have met all these people either. But what I've experienced is that, 7 out of 10 people that claim to be spiritual are kind of, not really. It's more about talking about it and appearing like that. And every conversation has to come back to something about the universe or source. You can't have a normal conversation. You can't watch a TV show that's just a normal TV show and just exist and have an okay time without it, having to be spiritual in nature, without having to relate it back to the universe. You ever met people like that? You get like an injury and they're like, oh, I think you're holding anger. And it's like, I'm pretty sure I just tweaked my back because I didn't lift the box correctly. It's not all these underlying issues. Sure, there's truth in these things, right? But the idea is that it's more concerned with everything having to be spiritual. Everything has to be about this information, and it's dishonest, disgenuine. It doesn't actually help, because when you put your head, and I say this a lot, when you put your head in your pillow at the end of the day, most of the information that you can get about New Age spirituality or spirituality in general, it's not going to do you any good. Twin flames, starseeds, crystals. Ayahuasca, bufo, all of these things, right? All of this information. When you go to bed at night, what are you with? What are you experiencing? Do you have that discomfort still that maybe you've had your whole life? Do you have some pain? Do you have some anxiety, some nervousness? Right? Do you have confusion? Do you have anger? Do you have emotions that you don't really want to feel but have no choice but to? They're coming up, right? Is your life still not going the way that you want it to? Do you feel alone, lonely? Do you feel sad, depressed? Do you feel like a lot of grief? Do you feel frustrated you're not farther ahead in life? That's what you experience. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's president. It doesn't matter what's going on over there. It doesn't matter, because it's just you and your thoughts and your feelings and your body, and you're alone, and that's all you get. That's all you have. So spirituality is not necessarily about the information. It's not about the label. It's about that feeling. It's about 2 a.m. in the morning and you feel like you're going to kill yourself. That's what spirituality is about. It's about the feelings of grief that have been there since you were a kid. It's about the trauma and the pain that you are now hyper aware of and are solely responsible for transmuting. So that's what it's about. It's about coming into a relationship with yourself, getting to know yourself on a deepest level, rediscovering joy, peace, happiness that was always there, that was and is your natural state. It's all of our natural states. Natural state doesn't mean you feel it naturally all the time, but it's our natural state. But most of us are suffering as our natural state. Most of us are anxious or scared or afraid, or we have pain somewhere in our body. That's not our natural state. And yet spirituality, a lot of it is about appearing positive and about having good vibes and really kind of suppressing a lot of the uncomfortable things, even though that when your life starts to fall apart, you'll start to see a lot of these spiritual people begin to change their opinions and their ways of behavior. I was very much into a lot of New Age spiritual ideas when I first discovered spirituality. I didn't know any better, and so I have a slight empathy towards people who go through this or who are attracted to these ideas. But what happened to me was that my life started to fall apart within a year of all this information because the beliefs were not practical. And when it came all crashing down, when reality started to hit, I became very disillusioned. But I grew out of it and started to formulate my own sort of idea of grounded spirituality. That's sort of what I practice, this ability to verify things through my own experiences, right? Like even this morning, I had this dream where it felt very, very spiritual experience. I was like floating, when you have those dreams and you just know like this is not a normal dream. This is some extra level stuff. I was floating out of my body, like I felt myself leaving. Like I was experiencing the feeling of leaving the planet. I was like going into space. And I remember I was like, it didn't feel like negative, like it didn't feel like demonic or whatever. But I remember being like, no, I think I'm going to stay here. I don't want to go anywhere. I did not want to experience that sort of weird trajectory, whatever was happening. I didn't want that. Now, whether that's good or bad, that's not even the point. The point is that I've had plenty of spiritual experiences, things that are crazy, like out there. I've had deja vu. I've been to places where, I'm not kidding you, where I would go somewhere and it would be like I was in a totally different place, like not on Earth anymore. Like I was in a pocket dimension. Like it sounds silly, but the experience of those things have always stayed with me. And I've had lots of synchronicities. There's so much I could go into about all the spiritual experiences that I've had. But identifying with the spiritual experiences and making a belief system around them is not the same thing as being spiritual, as getting to know yourself. Because the thing is, all of those spiritual experiences, they're cool to think about, to look back on and go, oh, well, that was interesting. Like that happened. Even this morning, like, whoa, that was kind of cool. Like, what was that about? But by the end of the day, tonight, that dream that I had this morning has nothing to do with anything. That it doesn't matter that I had an out-of-body experience. Who cares? Because it doesn't really matter. It's not going to make me feel better. It's not going to get me the career that I want. It's not going to get me the success. It's not going to take the actions for me. It's not going to remove the feelings of discontent within me. So as cool or interesting as some of these spiritual ideas may be, they are ultimately kind of redundant if they can't advance your life in a very practical, grounded way and get you to understand yourself more. And a lot of people they're not really interested in that deep trajectory. They're interested in just finding a new community and staying within those guidelines. And it's in that sense, it's very much no different than religion. So of all those people, I've had to essentially leave them behind, or they left me behind, I guess, but life removed them from my path. Because what I needed, and of course what I want and what I need now, is people who are okay with themselves. People who experience, just peace and daily things. It's not really about the crazy, I went on an acid trip in Burning Man, or I'm going to go do some plant medicine in some faraway place, or go to some spiritual ayahuasca retreat in Costa Rica. All of that. It's can you pet your cat and feel peaceful about it? Can you go for a walk and just feel like really great that you're alive, or going for a walk? Can you feel like the presence of mind? Can you feel okay with it, with everything as it is? Or is there beauty anywhere? Right now, is there things going on in your life that could be nice, could be beautiful, you could be grateful for? What's the beauty in your life right now? Because most of the peace that we're after is very mundane, boring, everyday stuff. It really is. It's going for a walk. It's spending time with your pet or some animals, looking up at the sky, watching the birds, having a conversation with a friend, having like a cup of something warm while watching a good movie. It's not about the spiritual labels or those things that a lot of people talk about, right? It's not about abundance or law of attraction or manifestation. That might be a symptom of spirituality, but ultimately the goal of it is to understand yourself at a deeper level. So despite being spiritual myself, I don't resonate with a lot of people who claim to be spiritual, because you can take one look at them and you can immediately tell spirituality is this whole person's personality. And I don't like that when sports is someone's personality. I don't like it when video games is someone's personality. I don't like it when drugs or weed, in particular, is someone's personality. So why would I like it when spirituality is someone's personality, right? We can have different interests. We can be varied. We can learn new things and experience new things, right? I love Star Wars. But you won't catch me dressing up as a stormtrooper. All right, you won't catch me going to. You won't catch me making. I won't talking about Star Wars 24/7. I don't have a Star Wars channel. Okay, so there's a lot of interest that I have, but my personality doesn't reflect that, because I like to understand who I am, which is not a personality. So it's confusing and hard to see all these people essentially fall for that trap, and to look back and go, oh well, I did the same thing, right? So it's just something that I wanted to share, because maybe you yourself recognize these patterns, maybe even within yourself. And it's just a difficult thing to try and meet new people on a spiritual journey, because a lot of them just have ideas and they're just kind of wacky and out there. Like, a lot of people in the spiritual journey are just totally out there. And that's cool. Go as far as you can, I guess. But I always thought that the difference between, grounded spirituality and just being spiritual for the sake of it is, coming back into society and taking what you've learned and using that, right? Rather than just going off on some bus and just doing whatever you want, The idea is that the world doesn't need more gurus. The world needs people that start a YouTube channel and try to help other people, that just want to talk about real things. The world needs economists and globalists and humanitarians and writers and free thinkers and empaths and people that care, and it needs compassion. We don't need more self-proclaimed Instagram gurus. We don't need more tarot readings. We don't need more predictions. We don't need more spiritual drugs. We don't need more shamans. We don't need people like that. We need people who, even if they don't resonate with some of these ideas, still care enough to get to know themselves and in that vein help the world. Right? We do not need more quote unquote spiritual people. We don't need people saying that they're spiritual. We need people who just get straight to the point and move forward, right? We need people that care, right? So it's just sort of how I've been viewing things, how I've been looking at things. Maybe you guys resonate, maybe you don't. But ultimately, what I found for myself is that I just like people who are not one-dimensional. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, a lot of people that claim to be spiritual are just one-dimensional.